The day began like any other quiet Saturday in our neighborhood. The sun was warm, the sky painted with streaks of blue and gold, and the sound of sprinklers ticked rhythmically across manicured lawns. My daughter, Emily, had begged me to let her play outside. She was 9 years old, small for her age, with soft brown hair that always fell into her eyes and a smile that could melt anyone's heart. Emily had spina bifida, and though she used a wheelchair most of the time, she often chose to crawl in the grass when she felt strong enough. She said it made her feel free, like any other child playing outside without limits. That afternoon, she had Max beside her, our loyal golden retriever, who never left her side. Emily laughed as Max rolled onto his back, paws in the air, demanding belly rubs. She crawled across the soft green lawn, giggling, the sun glinting on her hair as if the world itself was celebrating her joy. I sat on the porch steps with a book in my lap, pretending to read, but really just soaking in the moment. These little bursts of happiness, simple as they were, meant the world to me. But then came the sharp, unmistakable sound of heels clacking against the pavement. I didn't even need to look up. I already knew who it was. Karen. Karen was the self-appointed queen of our HOA. Short blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, a permanent scowl etched into her face. She was notorious for finding problems where none existed. Trash cans left out a minute too long? Violation. Grass an inch taller than regulation? Warning. Kids drawing chalk flowers on the sidewalk? Graffiti? She ruled the neighborhood like a dictator with a clipboard, and she had made us her favorite targets. Her shadow fell across the lawn as she stopped dead in her tracks, her lips curling into a sneer. "What on earth is that?" she barked, pointing a manicured finger toward Emily. I stood immediately, tension rising in my chest. "That's my daughter," I said firmly. "She's playing in our yard." Karen's face twisted in disgust. "Playing? Crawling around like that? On the lawn? That's unsanitary. It's disturbing." She placed a hand dramatically on her hip, her voice rising loud enough for nearby neighbors to hear. "If she can't walk, she should stay inside. People shouldn't have to watch that kind of thing." The words hit like a punch to the gut. I felt my fists clench, but before I could answer, Emily looked up from the grass, her laughter gone. Her small hands tightened around Max's fur, her wide eyes filled with confusion and hurt. I walked closer, forcing calm into my voice. "She's not bothering anyone, Karen. She's in our yard on our grass. She's allowed to enjoy herself just like any other child." But Karen wasn't listening. She never did. She raised her phone with exaggerated flair and dialed a number, her voice dripping with spite as she spoke loudly for everyone to hear. "Yes, animal control? I need to report a situation. There's something crawling on a lawn in our neighborhood. It's unsanitary, unsafe, possibly feral. You need to send someone immediately." My jaw dropped. Emily froze, staring at Karen with a look of pure disbelief. Her lip trembled as she whispered, "Mom, am I in trouble?" I knelt down, wrapping my arms around her. "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. She's the one who's wrong." But my words couldn't erase the sting of humiliation Karen had just inflicted. Karen ended the call with a smug smile, tucking her phone away. "Don't say I didn't warn you," she said coldly. "This neighborhood has rules, and I won't tolerate that." She gestured at Emily with disdain before striding off, her heels clicking like hammers of judgment on the pavement. Emily buried her face in my chest, her small voice muffled. "Mom, why does she hate me?" I didn't have an answer. My throat tightened as I looked down the street, fury boiling in my veins. This wasn't just another petty HOA complaint. Karen had crossed a line, a cruel, dehumanizing line that no parent should ever have to watch their child endure. And I knew this was only the beginning of a storm that would soon engulf the entire neighborhood. The minutes after Karen's phone call felt like hours. Emily had retreated back onto the porch steps, clutching Max's collar as if the dog could shield her from the cruelty she had just witnessed. Her wide, questioning eyes followed me every time I moved, silently begging for reassurance that I wasn't sure I could give. I stroked her hair, telling her over and over that she had done nothing wrong, But my voice sounded hollow even to myself. My mind raced between anger and disbelief. How could someone call animal control on a child, on a little girl who just wanted to feel the grass beneath her hands? It wasn't ignorance, it was malice. Pure, heartless malice. The rumble of a white van pulling into the cul-de-sac broke the tense silence. The bold letters across the side confirmed my worst fear: animal control. The van door swung open, and two uniformed officers stepped out, clipboards in hand, scanning the street like they were already hunting for a stray. My stomach turned. Karen emerged from behind her trimmed hedges at that exact moment, her expression triumphant. Lips curled into a smile so smug it made my blood boil. She strutted toward the officers, pointing dramatically at my house as if she were unveiling a crime scene. "There," she cried, her voice carrying down the block. "On the lawn. It's been crawling all over, scaring people, spreading germs. I warn them, but they don't listen." She was practically vibrating with excitement, certain she had finally caught us in some grand violation of her imagined rules. The officers looked toward my porch. Emily sat frozen, her small frame trembling, her little hands still gripping Max's fur. Her eyes darted between the strangers approaching and Karen's accusing finger. One of the officers hesitated, his brows furrowing in confusion. He clearly saw a child, not some wild animal. But Karen's performance left no room for doubt about her intentions. She doubled down, waving her arms. "You don't understand. This is a hazard." She was crawling on the ground like an animal. "It's a public health risk." I rose to my feet, my voice sharper than I intended. "That's my daughter. She has a disability, and she chooses to crawl sometimes because it gives her freedom. How dare you reduce her to anything less than the human being she is?" The younger officer shifted uncomfortably, clearly taken aback, but Karen scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, don't try to guilt-trip me. I'm just doing what's best for the neighborhood. If you won't keep things decent, then someone has to." Emily's lower lip quivered, tears welling in her eyes as she whispered, "Mom, they're going to take me away, aren't they?" The sound of her fear shattered me. I dropped to my knees, cupping her face. "No one is taking you away, sweetheart. No one." I looked up at the officers, forcing every ounce of steel I had into my voice. "You are not here to investigate a child. You were misled by a malicious complaint. My daughter is not an animal, and the fact that this even has to be said is appalling." The older officer cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unraveling before him. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "it seems there's been a misunderstanding. We received a report of a potential stray or unsafe situation." Obviously, his voice trailed off as he gestured toward Emily, who now sat trembling with embarrassment. His eyes hardened as he turned to Karen. "This isn't what we were told." Karen's face flushed red, but she crossed her arms defiantly. "You're not doing your job. Just look at her, on her hands and knees in the dirt. That's not normal. It's not appropriate. What kind of neighborhood lets people behave like that out in the open?" Max growled low in his throat, sensing the hostility. I placed a steadying hand on his back, but my gaze never left Karen's. What kind of neighbor looks at a child with a disability and calls animal control on her? You should be ashamed. My voice shook, not from fear, but from rage held barely in check. The officers exchanged glances, both now visibly irritated at being dragged into such cruelty. "We're not here to harass families, ma'am," the older one snapped at Karen. "This call was a waste of our time and resources. We deal with dangerous animals, not children playing in their yards. Don't misuse our services again." For the first time, Karen faltered. Her mouth opened as if to protest, but no words came out. The smug confidence drained from her face, replaced with the sour expression of someone who had been caught going too far. Yet, even as she huffed and muttered under her breath, she threw Emily one last look of disdain, as though she still saw my daughter as nothing more than nuisance. I gathered Emily into my arms, feeling her tiny frame shake against me. I whispered in her ear, promising her that no one, not Karen, Not anyone would ever make her feel like she didn't belong. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't over. Karen had been humiliated, and people like her didn't back down easily. She would come back meaner, louder, and more determined to make our lives miserable. And as I watched her stomp back toward her house, her phone already in hand, I realized the real fight was only beginning. The days following the incident with animal control weighed heavily on our household. Emily grew quieter, hesitant even to leave the porch, as though Karen's cruel actions had stolen the joy she once found in something as simple as feeling the grass beneath her hands. Max never left her side, his golden head resting on her lap, as if he understood she needed comfort more than ever. I tried to reassure her, but anger churned in me like a storm that refused to pass. What kind of world was this, where a child had to fear being treated like an animal in her own yard? My patience with Karen had finally snapped, and I knew I couldn't let this go unchallenged. Karen, for her part, didn't back down. She strutted around the neighborhood, whispering to anyone who would listen, spreading half-truths and painting herself as some kind of martyr who was only trying to uphold standards. She placed letters on neighbors' doors, citing unsanitary behavior and disturbing sights from our home, each one dripping with venom. But instead of rallying support, her antics began to raise eyebrows. Parents looked at their own children playing barefoot in the grass and realized just how ridiculous her crusade was. The tide was turning, and I intended to push it further. I reached out to a local advocacy group for families with disabilities, sharing what had happened to Emily. They were horrified and offered immediate support. Soon, stories spread online. A disabled child harassed by an HOA president, animal control called on her for simply crawling on the lawn. Outrage poured in from strangers across the state, their voices echoing what I already knew. Karen had crossed a line that could not be ignored. The neighborhood, too, began to shift. What had once been quiet tolerance of Karen's overreach was now replaced by murmurs of discontent. People were tired of her tyranny, tired of living under the thumb of someone who mistook cruelty for authority. It all came to a head at the next HOA meeting, held in the community clubhouse. The room buzzed with more residents than I had ever seen attend, their faces stern, many holding printed articles and screenshots of the story that had spread like wildfire. Karen sat at the head of the table, still posturing as though she controlled the room, but her eyes darted nervously from one side to the other. I wheeled Emily into the meeting beside me, Max trotting loyally at her side. Gasps rippled through the crowd at the sight of her small figure, brave and defiant despite the scars of humiliation she had endured. Karen tried to wave us off, her voice shrill. "This isn't on the agenda. We're here to discuss lawn maintenance and parking regulations," but the people weren't having it. One neighbor, an older man with fire in his voice, stood up and cut her off. "No, Karen. We're here to discuss how you called animal control on a disabled child. We're here to talk about the line you crossed." The room erupted. Parents, veterans, even retirees who had once stayed silent now spoke up, one after another, recounting their own run-ins with Karen, their frustrations at her abuse of power, and their disgust at what she had done to Emily. Each voice added weight to the case against her, and for the first time, Karen's bluster faltered. She tried to defend herself, claiming she was misunderstood, that she was only concerned for safety. But the words rang hollow. The crowd had seen enough, and the evidence was stacked against her. When it was finally my turn to speak, I placed my hand gently on Emily's shoulder and addressed the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My daughter is not a nuisance. She is not an animal. She is a human being with more courage than the woman who tried to shame her. And if this HOA allows that kind of cruelty to stand, then this neighborhood is broken beyond repair. The silence that followed was deafening, every pair of eyes fixed on Karen. The vote to remove her from the HOA presidency was swift and decisive, the majority raising their hands without hesitation. Karen's face twisted with fury as the reality sank in. Her reign of control was over. She tried to protest, But her words were drowned out by applause, by neighbors standing in solidarity with my daughter. Emily's face lit up with something I hadn't seen in days, a smile. She leaned into me, whispering, "They believe me now, Mom." Tears stung my eyes as I kissed her forehead, whispering back, "They always should have." Karen stormed out of the clubhouse that night, her power stripped, her reputation shattered. She never so much as looked at our house again. For Emily, the lawn became hers once more. The very next morning, she crawled across the grass with Max bounding beside her, laughter spilling from her lips as the sun painted her in gold. And this time, the neighbors didn't whisper or look away. They waved, they smiled. They saw her not as a spectacle, but as the brave, beautiful girl she was. For the first time in a long while, the neighborhood felt like home again, not because Karen was gone, but because Emily had shown them all what true strength looked like.